When faced with the prospect of hearing loss, many people will assume their concert era is over. So I was intrigued when I heard about Chris and Sean. They're lifelong friends who, in an almost unbelievable statistical anomaly, both lost their hearing in their right ear due to a rare brain tumor called an acoustic neuroma. And they responded by doubling down on their commitment to music. I just had to get them on the podcast. They invited me down to their album launch that was only a few hours away. So I knew it was time to pack up and take this podcast on the road. I'm Emily Truell, and I started the Lucky Brain Tumor podcast to give voice to the diverse experiences of people diagnosed with acoustic neuromas. Welcome to this episode of the Lucky Brain Tumor podcast. I'm honored to be at Some Odd Pilot Records today. Joining me is Sean Wolfe, known as the musician Salvo Beta, and also Chris Eichenseer, who is the founder of Some Odd Pilot Records. You guys both were diagnosed with acoustic neuromas, and you were friends prior to the diagnosis. Yeah. Chris, do you want to share your story of being diagnosed and what that all looked like for you?
It was just after the pandemic was kind of easing down, and I'm driving with a cell phone, and I realize that one of the ears is working much better, and I keep thinking that like is something wrong with the phone or where I'm holding it. And then some time goes by, and I mention it to a doctor, and he kind of doesn't take it all that seriously. And then I get an audio test, and the vibrations from that go through your skull naturally allow my good ear to pick up all the stuff that the bad ear is missing when they're testing it, so they don't catch it. And then another year goes by, I'm watching TV with my kids, and my good ear is like leaning against the couch, and the things I'm hearing coming through my right ear sound like someone's running it through a guitar pedal distortion box. And that's an alarming sound, like when the voice on the TV is just a kid's cartoon and it becomes like this like evil crunchy sounding. I was like, wait, that's so I'm testing it, and I can hear it clearly, and so I know something's up. The audiologist was like almost annoyed with trying to figure out what the heck was going on with the results that she was getting from me. And I felt like I had that feeling of like I'm not doing the test right. And so she comes in and she's like, the only way I can explain this is that you've got a tumor. And man, I'm a musician, so I'm thinking like, well, no, I did this because I play the drums, and this is the ear that faces the cymbals, and I'm like, you have no idea how hard I hit these cymbals, like everyone complained about it, like my whole life, like it's got to be that, of course it's that. And she's like, well, both of your ears were with you the whole time you were doing that. And I was like, yeah, but this one was pointing at it, She's like, come on, like they were both in the room, which is something most people don't think about, like that this asymmetry is kind of a shock. It shouldn't really be happening that way, right? So anyway, then she says tumor. I was beside myself. I had my daughter's like 9-year-old soccer practice. I was coaching that right after that appointment, and I remember just like standing on the field being like, do I have a tumor? And like these lovely like young kids are running around like in this sort of joyous like participation that I get to have in this like lovely slice of life is like has this hanging over it now. And I think that's probably a common experience for people who like are suddenly told that there's something inside their head that shouldn't be there. Yeah, it's pretty scary.
It is. It's very overwhelming. Yeah. And especially because so often you feel mostly normal, right? You're just a little off. Your hearing's a little weird. It never would occur that you had a brain tumor, right? Those scary words.
Yeah, like that's not the story that I thought I was writing, And then I got the MRI right away, and I saw the first few words, and it was like heterogeneously enhancing lesion on the brain. Now, none of those things to me sounded like a benign tumor that the woman told me about. Like, so I just thought like, oh, there's something else going on, and I've got a death sentence, And I'm thinking about my kids, and like they're like at that time like 12 and 7. The first thought was like someone else is going to raise my kids. That's a pretty painful, I don't know, that was the most painful concept. And then all of a sudden you're like, if I'm actually done for, like this is going to be everyone's life now, and my kids too. And I just didn't want any of that. I didn't want any of this. Like, that's the whole thing. I think everyone probably experiences some level of that, where you're just like, I don't want this. This isn't the thing I signed up for. So when I was told that it was, no, this is just a normal, benign, they're going to take it out and you're going to be fine. That was one of the happiest days of my life. And so I was set up now to be like, well, I'm just going to give up an ear. Like, that's fine. Like, I can do that. Like, I can totally do that. And I felt like blessed, and I felt lucky, and I felt like I had dodged a bullet. So that really helped me out, actually, as weird as it sounds, but it wasn't fun to go through that.
So how big was your tumor at diagnosis?
It was 2 centimeters.
Okay.
About a gumball.
All right. And so what did you end up deciding to do as far as the tumor? Did you do treatment right away? Did you watch and wait?
I got on it pretty quick. I had a hard time deciding if I was going to do the gamma ray procedure or if I was going to do surgery. Such an odd choice to be given. I'm sure everyone has struggled with thinking that through. It's like, do I want to have, someone open up my skull, which sounds incredibly dangerous? Or do I want someone to zap this thing with invisible rays? And I didn't like the sound of that. And there was something about the just just do this thing. Like, this is like the straight answer, is to just get it out. That made me want to do it that way.
Where did you get your surgery, if you want to go into that, and what surgical approach did you choose?
We talked to some doctors in Chicago. We went to Rush. They're recommended for the procedure in the Chicago area. We talked to them, and then my wife just had the idea of like, oh, what if we got a second opinion from the Mayo Clinic? And she found out she could set up an appointment pretty easily via teleZoom stuff. And we had a consultation. They were super welcoming and friendly, and the insurance could do it. So she was like, what if we just, all in on Mayo Clinic and drive up to Rochester? And it's not convenient, but, I really got along with the doctors, because there's the neurosurgeon and there's the head surgeon. And you quickly learn that they're both very involved, and you're signing up for both. My surgery went from being 6 hours to 16. Which is a really, really long, I didn't realize it, but that's like a really long time to be under. They were super careful, and I had like a lot of facial paralysis for like the 4 to 6 weeks after that. And that was pretty intense. I gotta say, like, that's a life-changing part of this that I think everyone has never thought of before until they get the diagnosis, and then everyone's like, well, your hearing's gone. Like, I'm sorry to tell you, everyone's like, well, are they going to get your hearing back? And you're like, no, I just like the whole mission is like not to paralyze my face, and waking up in the ICU and not being able to smile or close my eye or lift my eyebrow or wrinkle my nose when they asked me to. I was panicked. I was like, oh, they destroyed it. Like, this is the new me. I adjusted to that because I thought it was permanent too. They said give it 6 months. And I was like, oh, they're just being nice, So I tried to adjust how I was going to think about my life, and I was like, well, those guys in Goodfellas have those or Sopranos have those cool ways of talking where they don't maybe use their whole face with big smiles and stuff. Like, maybe I could develop this Marlon Brando-esque way of communicating that would make up for not being able to smile,
Sean, could you share your story of learning about your acoustic neuroma diagnosis?
We have a mutual friend, Jason, and we started talking about our health because we're old men now. That's what we do. And then he's like, Chris he's got a brain tumor and he's going to lose all of his hearing. And I was like, I was going to talk about my hearing loss. And I'm like, whoa, I guess I can't complain because Chris has got a brain tumor and he's going to completely lose his hearing. So who am I to say that my problem is that big a deal, So it's just and I thought also this hearing loss, I thought I did it. I thought it was me either listening to music too loud or it being in bands, or maybe it's even the medication that you have for other things in your life. I started talking, I have a psychiatrist. I was like, you know what? This hearing loss is really starting to bother me now. And she's like, let's try and figure it out. And she's like, you know what? If you have a classical membership, go there. They have an audiologist center. It's free. Just get an audiogram and let's see how bad your hearing is. And I went there and I talked to him, and he tried to do bone conduction and he tried to do air conduction. He did the whole thing, and he did masking where he just blast really loud noise in my good ear. Or sometimes what they do is it's like a crowded room sound, like 1,000 people talking. He showed me the audiogram, and it was like 500 hertz, and then it just falls off. And then it had also a separate thing where it's like they have like a word score or something and it was like 24%, which is terrible. And so at that time, I had some things that were going on here in like Milwaukee and Chicago, and I decided to visit some friends. And we were hanging out at a bar, and he told me his whole story about what he went through, his surgery and everything. And I said, yeah, I got, some hearing loss too, and all this stuff. And then I showed him the audiogram, and you're like, what do you think about that asymmetry? Like, because that's what mine looked like, almost exactly. When you get back to Portland, you should go get an MRI. And so I did, and I read it, and it was in that doctor lingo. It was like, I remember enhancing mass vestibular canal. I called Chris. I said, this is what it says. And he says, that's what mine said. And I'm like, oh my God. It was actually kind of a relief. And I think the relief was one, I now know what the problem is. And two, it wasn't me. It was my body. My body did it to me. But it wasn't like the stupid things I was doing in my life.
No, there's nothing you can do to cause an acoustic neuroma or to avoid an acoustic neuroma. It's just luck of the draw that your chromosome misfires and you get one.
I think there's like a lot of blame that you want to put on yourself, and it makes you not want to actually seek out help, because you're just going to say, a doctor's going to say, it's your fault, you're being stupid, right? And you're like, you don't want a doctor to say that to you. Like, start finding out what the problem is, because it probably isn't you. It might be you, but your body does all kinds of weird things. That's
definitely the first time that I've heard acoustic neuroma diagnosis via Costco and a friend. That's pretty unusual, but pretty amazing.
Yeah, and that's the lo-fi way to do it.
I know, right? But it's amazing that you got there, and it's so awesome.
The place that I got the MRI at was the Oregon Clinic. They then referred me to, they have an acoustic neuroma place there. They talked to me a bit about it, and then I think they were saying, we're leaning towards radiosurgery. So that was in July of 2024. They said, but we're going on vacation and we have a bunch of other patients, so we can't even get you in to like do the consultation until November. Chris also suggested call around, and I did. I called the Mayo Clinic, and then I called UCSD. I called Mayo Clinic. They were really receptive, but they couldn't even do a virtual appointment for me because they weren't licensed to practice in Oregon. So I was about to go and book some plane tickets to go to Mayo Clinic so that they could just because they couldn't talk to me on the phone. They couldn't legally say like, okay, this is what we recommend or anything. And I called UCSD and they said, upload your MRI. I did. And then they called me back and they're like, yeah, we have a few options we could do. We recommend surgery. What do you think? So first of all, UCSD has an amazing, one of the top acoustic neuroma programs in the country, possibly even the world. They had a fellow call me because I was like, could we do maybe the retrosigmoid? Because I still have a little bit of hearing here, and I think maybe I'm a musician. I want to maybe preserve it. And then the doctor called me, and he's like, I hear you're kind of wavering on what you want to do. And in this conversation, he said a few things. And one of them, he says, your tumor is small, and it might be just totally fine to just watch and wait. That's really a clear way to do it. And I thought that was really cool that he wasn't just like, let's just go in there and dig it out, right? So he's like, you could just watch and wait and see if it becomes a bigger problem. Because right now, the only symptoms that you are having is hearing loss, and your hearing is not going to get back. You're not going to get back any. What you have lost, you lost. It's not coming back. And then they said, well, if you want to get surgery, we could do those other surgeries. We don't recommend them because we're usually very successful at these. We don't have any problems, but it's a risk that if we don't have to take it, let's not take it. And he said, with your speech score of 24%, that is considered non-functional hearing. So even if you do have hearing sensation there, it's kind of useless. So what you are losing is not much at all. And I'm like, okay, well, if I'm losing that and I've already lost a lot of hearing, what about a CI? And they're like, yeah, we'll put in a CI if you want that. We could totally do it. And so at that point, I sat down and I thought, well, I'm at the youngest I'll ever be. It's the tumor at that time. It was 1.2 centimeters. It was the smallest it will ever be. I had great health care. I had a job that was allowing me to go on short-term disability. So I was like, let's do this. They got me in October. We scheduled the whole thing to fly down to San Diego. They took the thing out. They have a whole program there that's both vestibular rehab, hearing rehab, the cochlear activation. They had a whole thing there, and their program is amazing.
So they actually offered auditory rehab, like where they helped work with you on relearning hearing. Was that specifically
they gave
tied
me to the Connections team of people that they work? So they at UCSD, and then they have an audiologist center there that they work with, and she does a lot of the hearing testing. And then I was also a part of a nerve conductivity study. So when they had me open and before they put in the CI, they did a nerve conductivity test because they wanted to get conduct a study to understand better how the outcomes would be for acoustic neuroma patients that get CIs. Like what is the measurements that's going to tell us like what the likely outcomes of it's going to be.
Yeah. So you did the cochlear implant surgery right with the brain tumor removal. It was all the same surgery.
They did both at the same time. They said that, and yeah, they were like, yeah, we could do that. We'll put it in. We've done hundreds of them.
Did the doctor know going into your brain surgery if you would be a candidate, or was it something that they were going to call on the fly mid-surgery?
So the things that they told me about the surgery, and they said, well, after we decided on Translabyrinth, they said, yeah, your tumor, where it's placed and its size, we believe that we have a 99.9% chance that we're not going to mess up your facial nerve. Then they said, we don't know how much of the nerve is going to be there. And then they said, we'll put the CI in, but there's a 50-50 chance that it will work, if at all. And then even if they said after that, then there might be only a certain amount of success of how conductive it will be. So what they had me do is that I had to find a local audiologist in Portland. And that was actually really difficult because I called around in a few places and they were like, we won't touch you unless we put the CI in. I then found a place, Pacific Audiology Center, and they said, you know what, we have actually had a few referrals from UCSD. So yeah, we'll take you. When I was at the audiologist and they did the activation, she then gave me the resources to Heroes app.
Oh, great. Yeah. And did you do that?
Yes, I did go through that. And then they said, you just got to wear the CI, do the listening, and then do the Heroes app. You know, there's a whole process of where, like, you know, after you get the CI, you do, like, I think it's like a couple weeks and then a couple months. And then it's every 6 months, you know. So, and in that process, she keeps testing me to see what my progress of accepting and understanding comprehension that I'm getting at. And so like my last one, my word scores were like, I was like at like on one of them it was like 40%, and now I'm like at 80%.
That's really good.
Yeah.
80%. Wow.
So and she says like, if you are doing this well, when you come back, we're gonna make the test harder. So they're gonna do like I don't think they're gonna add more noise or make different like speech. I can't remember what the deal is, but she says there's like leveling up that they do to see how you progress and so on. And I was really kind of interested and excited about the CI because actually I've been kind of fascinated by it from a long time ago. I saw a documentary called Sound and Fury. It was about a mixed hearing and deaf family. Husband was deaf and the wife was hearing, but she had deaf family members, and then they had 2 children that were hearing, but then they had a third kid that was then deaf. And it became a friction point because half the family said, let's get her a CI, and the other half like, why would you do that? Right? And I thought that was really interesting. I didn't know about CIs, and I started learning about them, and I found out like, oh, what does it do? Does it just like replace your hearing? And it's like, no, it's a hearing assisting device, and it sounds different. I'm like, what does it sound like? You know, I'm a musician and a sound guy, and so like that sounds fascinating. There was that time that I was in the activation room. It was kind of like a white knuckle moment. So what they start doing is they start turning on each electrode, and it makes like a beep, 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 and then it goes in the next one and the next one. And so they're saying like, are you getting sensation through any of these? I'm like, yeah, I get that one, I get that one, I get that one. And it turned out all of them worked, and they were really, really exciting. it. Sorry, just a second.
No, you're okay.
So it was like an exciting and like just relieving moment to be able to hear in that ear again, you know. So
That's amazing. Best case scenario.
yeah, I was so lucky. And my wife, they plugged up my ear, the good one, and they had her go around the corner and say some nonsense, and I was able to hear her and repeat what she said. So it was a fantastic moment. So
It is. Amazing what the technology can do.
yeah.
It is. And when you have good treatment and good doctors that fight for you and help you get back to things that you need to get back.
Yeah.
It's miracle stuff.
Yeah.
What's really interesting about Sean, so I add some context to some of that, some of our musicianness.
Yes, please.
Like, you know, when people say, "Oh, I'm a musician," and you hear about like a record label or something, I honestly myself, I think of like most folks would be talking about like an acoustic guitar and some singing and some stuff, or like a band, like a rock band or something. But you know, the Some Odd Pilot Records and Salvo Beta are primarily in this kind of like experimental electronic music worlds. So there was a thing in the late 90s when like laptops started becoming commonplace in computers, and people were writing music with just their computer, and that, you know, got dubbed electronic music. And then something called IDM was coined to mean intelligent dance music, and it was kind of like electronic music made to kind of like, you'd be bobbing your head, but there'd be all these like little special things happening in the audio field, special sounds, or like using a lot of outboard gear and distortion units, or like wave form changing gear to specialize and create and craft like your unique sounds. So like people like Sean has spent, you know, endless time noodling with electronic gear. Like maybe he'll grab a recording of like a field recording of something like a bus passing by, or, you know, one of the artists on the label was just making their drum beats out of sounds at Costco. And you would never know that was what he was, you know, the source of these things. And so they're processing sound, and they become like these alchemists of sound. And I grew up with this in my basement because my friends were over all the time, and they were plugging in. I mean, we had like a bajillion guitar cables and patch cables all over the place, and stacks of outboard gear and mixers and stuff. And the whole thing is like, you're just like, it's like Frankenstein sound making, right? Yes. So Sean is in that group of friends, right? And we would play shows together and all these things. Well, Sean was like the electronic musician in that group who was like, we literally named his first record Abrasive Stuttering. Because Sean's the one who's like, I'm going to push, you know, this to the max everywhere. I'm going to make everything sound like it's croaking and breaking and feedbacking. And I mean, it was like his specialty was like the crazy noise, like the insanity, like literally his like song to song on Abrasive Stuttering is like just insanity, but made into like really listenable, beautiful music that we can follow the beats and do all these really cool things with it. And so it's like experimental, but it's also very like linear in terms of like, it's listenable. Like it's very, very listenable. It just doesn't have lyrics and it doesn't have words. It's not concerned with all that kind of stuff. So this is generally the pursuit. And then so for Sean to like walk into a situation where he's like, yeah, I'm getting the CI thing and it's going to be implanted into my brain and I can Bluetooth into it. You're just like, oh yeah, of course you are. You know what I mean? And so to hear him sitting there saying like, oh, I was excited to do this, and like, I didn't realize that before, but it makes perfect sense because he'd be like drooling at the concept of like, oh, I can get that jammed into my head now and plug in, you know?
Right.
And you know, I was just thinking about I made his first album cover back in the year 2000, and it was a really simple cover. It was like this big orange square, and he called his record Abrasive Stuttering, and like, there's not a lot of like direct visual imagery that might go with that, but I went with this like I made a graph across the orange field, and then made like a sound wave going across this, and then it's like turns into this big gnarly knot of crap, and then it comes back down to a sound wave again, and like that image kind of became synonymous with your music. And it's funny to hear you talk about all this stuff, and it's like that's your life. Yeah. It's like not only playing with these toys and making music with it, But now, like, training his brain
with the digital technology.
Yeah.
And then like that was the thing, like when I went through the rehab, and it was about 3 months after that, and then you guys had the Still Machine record coming out, and I was pretty much done with my record. I still had to mix it, but I wasn't really doing anything, and so they came and said, well, we want to get a remix record, are you be interested? I'm like, I'll give it a shot. I tried one thing and it wasn't working at all. I was getting frustrated, and I was a little bit worried, but then I went to another song, and I was going through the lyrics, and just the lyrics track, and then my wife was behind me in the room, and she's like, did he just say hegemonic debasement? Because she thought that was such a weird phrase. I'm like, we wound it, and like, yep, you certainly did. And like, that's the song. And so I started focusing on playing with those lyrics, and then I pitch shifted his voice, so it kind of like, I was like, oh, I'm gonna make it kind of feel like how the voices sound to me. I'm doing these pitch shifting things, and then Jason, he plays this Moog part, and I'm like, oh yeah, there's this thing where, especially when you first start having it, like pitches are like kind of in between spots in the CI, and it's not able to track it well, and it goes like, it jumps or something. So I'm like, well, I'm just gonna run it, and I had like this way I could visually see and move a little thing around to say like, oh, I'm gonna move it over here, I'm gonna move it down here, I'm gonna move it back here, and then in that process I was realizing like, oh, this is helping me understand what's going on here better, and then
because you're playing with pitch, and you're adjusting sound.
It's like, well, it's called spectral shaping, which even more than pitch, it's like the overtones, like taking the overtones and moving them to a different place. It sounds really weird, like going like either sounding like it's like screaming, or just like underwater, in between it, but it's the same sound. And then at the same time, I was watching a YouTube guy, and he's like kind of like gives advice on like mixing and so on. And he's like, you need to go, like, if you want to become good at mixing, you need to go through and like take out an EQ, especially if you have a visual EQ, and look and understand what these frequencies are, so that you can, when you're listening to a mix, like, oh, this is where the problem is. It's around here. I could pull out an EQ and I could drag it down. And I'm like, I could do that to also train myself. So I could go and take the EQ and just say, here's 500 hertz, here's 900 hertz, here's 1.2K, here's 4K, like here's all these things, and I could sit there, I could visualize it, move it, and then pay attention to like what's going on in my ear in the CI. And like, I think that was part of my healing process and my programming process, I guess, to say. And I was really excited about it. I wasn't sure if they were gonna like it, because it was weird.
It's awesome. So Sean's music writing just like has blown up. I mean, 20 years ago it was, it was more like a reckless experimental, tumbleweed flying down the railroad tracks, and now it's just like, it just sounds like somebody who's baked in all of the stuff over time, and he is just unleashed, and it's like a tidal wave, and it's just fantastic. And so he turns in it's called hegemonic debasement, right? What was the other song that you made?
And then a demonic basement,
right? And then so the other song he titled A Demonic Basement,
because it sounded like he's saying, it's like what I was mishearing it is like, I thought he was saying a demonic basement, and then I cut the words out, so it was like demonic door down the basement,
Sean, could I have you share the story of creating music the night before your surgery?
The surgery was coming up, and I was going to go and fly down to San Diego, and I was like, this might be it, like I might, the CI might work, it might not, I might lose my hearing completely in that ear, and maybe I won't be able to make music, or I'll have difficulty. So I had to go out, I had to do something. So I said, okay, I'm going to go to the studio. It's my last chance. And I went in there, and I just spent the evening. I think I was there. It just started with a couple chords and a sound, and then it just all came together. Like, I had the song, and I was so excited about it, and I brought it with me, and I listened to it like when I was on the plane. And then it was one of the first things that I listened to after the CI I decided, I can stream music into my head now. And I'm like, I'm going to use this song. And so that song on the record is largely untouched. I've done only just some like sonic polishing and so on. But the entire composition, I ended up naming it kind of tongue-in-cheek, monoreal lamental, because I was like lamenting that I was losing this hearing. And it's kind of a sweet and sad song, but it's also, there's a little bit of hopefulness, a little bit of melancholy, you know. And I think it's fun. I think it sounds nice and sweet compared to all my other brutal stuff that I do. So, but yeah, it was just something I had to do. I had to just go there, crank it out, and I was just so happy that it happened. Because usually, sometimes making these things take me weeks, months, you know, to write a song, and it was so fun and satisfying to just do one thing and get it done, and then do it, and it was something that really meant something.
You talked a little bit in a previous interview about how your music interacts with your cochlear implant and how that's a little bit different than perhaps your typical like acoustic guitar. Could you describe a little bit about?
Yeah. So, and it was definitely, so the new album that I have coming out, all of it was made before I had the surgery. But I was having hearing loss at the time. But then afterwards I had to mix it. And so I had a little bit of difficulty mixing it. And because I have a lot of these complex and harsh sounds, it was difficult. I had to come up with some techniques to swap the left and right channels to make sure things sounded correct on both, and that I experienced things the same way. And then at one point when I was going through these sessions where I go and I go to the studio, work on stuff, come home, and listen to it in the car, and then like it's really weird because I was playing it through my phone to the car, and then it would, when I turned the car off, it would jump from my car to my CI. It would just suddenly switch over there. I'm like, oh, okay. And then one of the songs came on, because most of them, it's really hard to discern certain things. And I've tried listening to, like, I can't remember what band it was, but it was maybe Queens of the Stone Age or something else that I really enjoy. But like a lot of like heavy distorted guitar, and with vocals, like you can't really distinguish it. But then I heard one of the songs, I'm like, oh, there's like space in the song. I could hear the little details in there. And that really was like, this is kind of interesting. That makes me think that maybe I can start working on something to make music that can specifically be made for a CI person to experience and listen to and enjoy and hear music that's shaped for them, right? Because this was like a taste of that. And I definitely want to go on and start exploring those avenues of making CI compatible music, or even CI specific music. I know there's going to be difficulties in that because everybody's going to have different experiences. They have different hardware, or their sensitivity is going to be diminished to a certain extent, and also placement inside the cochlea is going to be varying. But technology is improving, and it's going to be interesting to see what's happening out there. And this is something I definitely want to try.
That's really amazing, and I can't wait to see what you come up with.
It took somebody else to point out this the oddity of me and Sean's stories and how it relates to music.
Wow.
In the first place. Yeah, no, this wasn't a thought we had. We were just charging along, doing our thing. And then our friend Dan Mistitch, who helps me with the record label, was like, what's this thing about your cochlear implant, Sean? And then I was like, oh, that's the same thing. Wait, Chris has the same tumor? Like, and then it's like, well, yeah, it's like this music story that runs counter to losing your hearing, and is kind of fascinating. And it's like, I don't know, that's a fun thing to explore, and like to be like for Sean to be like an ambassador to that, and to be like, what can we do with this? Because like I'm already a he's already like a sound nut, so like why not dial it into his particular thing, and people like him that are experiencing the world differently.
I love that, because it's really multiple layers of unusual, because you have the connection with this same rare brain tumor and then the music over the top of it.
Like, and we sat side by side doing all of that, and like we've worked through things. We've been in bands that played on the same bill all over the country. I've been making the art for his music. It's just really weird. And then we both have this thing happen to us. And we're both like, kind of wired the same too. Like we can sit and talk about this stuff all night. So like we'll hang out all night and bond over this stuff, and then go on to the, and then we'll walk down the sidewalk, and we both have the same. We both have.
Oh, you're both right. That's too bad.
We're both on the right, so like somebody has to walk backwards so we can listen to each other.
But I was like, you know what? I got the hardware. I'll take the bump spot.
There you go. That's really funny.
Yeah.
I think so much about human experience is about, like, the charm is in imperfections, and the charm is in the details and the nuance, and like that's the experience that our senses give us. If we're listening to them, we're pulling all that in and then regurgitating what comes out. And yeah, sometimes it's like broken and altered, and I don't care that I don't have this ear. Like I really don't. It's only a problem when, like, with communication stuff. But interestingly enough, my therapist has always reminded me that I listen too much to what other people are saying, and I quiet my own voice. And so now I'm like, oh great, I'm gonna miss half of the stuff they're saying now, and that works out, because then I'll just listen to my inner voice more, because I need that, But this stuff's just how, like, life is going, and like I'm perfectly fine with it, because I want to experience whatever there is, and here's what we got, and Sean gives me the track, and that's what we got. Like, I'm not making the track, and but I get to react to it, and I think that's what he's doing with his CI and what I'm not doing without a CI. And like there's no way in hell I'm gonna go and get my head opened up again to get a CI. Like, I'm not. I love listening to him talk about it, and like it's amazing to me that it's also like emotionally powerful for him to have that activated, where, like, for me the emotional stuff comes from like more like the survivorship of it. Mm-hmm. Where I think for him it was more focused on, because he had me to buffer the fear.
Yes.
And he got to go like right to like, well, what's the acoustical possibilities here?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm gonna die. So like my moments, there's I think I have really strong emotional moments when I touch my head sometimes and just feel like the bumps, or feel the deadness of my head. And it brings me back to being a human, and it brings me back to vulnerability, and it reminds me, like, oh yeah, dude, you're wigging out on all these things that aren't that important. Like, you had brain surgery. Like, that's a refrain I tell myself all the time. Like, dude, like, you had brain surgery. And it's like, it's the most like centering, like grounding thought you could have. And then it's like, all right, yeah. Like, everything else is manageable. Like, I'm here. I have this wound. By the way, for people who have this condition, like, it's one of the most miraculous things in the world is like taking a nap. When you have one ear, it's amazing. Like, anything can be going on in my house, and I'm just like, yeah, see you guys later. And like the good ear goes into a pillow, world shuts off. And that is every time I go to bed, like, I bring myself back to that healing time after the surgery, and feel the care that people had for me.
Oh yeah.
The attention to myself that I gave myself, and I get there just by laying down on my pillow, and I still prop my head up on an extra pillow since that surgery, because it's comforting to me now. And then I like lean into the good ear, and I hear the world go away, and I just feel so peaceful and cared for. And I think, like, I don't know, like, really powerful things come from adversity.
Absolutely. And I do love you sharing, where you're at on your hearing choices. And I have a bone anchored hearing device. You have no hearing device. You have a cochlear implant. Like, right. All of us had the same brain tumor, chose very different routes. And we're, the biggest thing is that we're happy where we are, and that we had options, and that we were able to pursue those options. And I think that's just a wonderful thing.
Yes.
I do want to take a moment to give everyone an opportunity to see a little bit of the music video that you made. would like to just talk a little bit about your experiences with creating the music, performing the music, creating the video. So frequently when you have an acoustic neuroma, after going through treatment and all of that, there are some changes to how your brain works. And there are new things you might have to cope with, like hearing fatigue is a really common one, or balance struggles. And all of these things can change how stimulation works for your brain. And your music and your music video is very stimulating. I watched it and my reaction was like, how did they edit this? I can hardly watch this because like I personally really struggle with strobes. They make me very sick since my surgery, and before that I had no problem. And I know I'm not alone, and I know a lot of people even struggle sometimes just attending concerts because the noise is so much and they get headaches. So I'd love to hear how you guys navigate that as you're in these noisy environments.
There was actually, the strobe thing is really interesting. He did another music video for an artist called Radius. I actually struggle with that one. That one has a much stronger stroboscopic effect, and that one really kind of bothered me. And then when he did this music video, and he had some of that stroboscopic video in it, and then I was going back and I was rereading one of the interviews the one we did for the Hearing Health Foundation. Yeah. And I was like, I need to let you do that because that's kind of like your visual. Like I did my auditory experience of it, you know, of what this is like, right? Now you're doing it in a visual medium. Like you're visually showing us that you're having this damaged nerve here, right? So I was like, keep the strobes in on ours, just make it not too hard.
Yeah, I remember that. I never had that thought that strobing would be a thing. And I mean, I've always been kind of a maximalist, and I love stimulation. Like I have ADHD, and it's like I could go forever on creative tangents and things. So when I'm making those videos, like I have a perfectionism that I can defeat if I have constraints and like if the time is now. So I end up waiting to the last minute to do these things, and I have to get it turned in by 8 a.m. for the press release to go out. And so I will end up working straight through the night on something as kinetically mad as what you saw. And at like 2 a.m. I'm like, I'm in deep with strobing crazy edits. And like it starts off like that video starts off with just, a handful of edits. And then all of a sudden there's like 100 of them or hundreds of them. And then I'm like, well, how do I really draw out what Sean's doing by strobing or creating some additional noises, like visual noise to smear around, and like the madness that I'm at like 3 a.m. when like I'm super, super tired. But like, and if it was you'd be ready to die from that amount of stimulation, because I've got like 5 hours left, and I know that it's going to be tedious, and I'm going to be in front of it, the entire time with few breaks, and it's going to be ramping up, because it ramps up in complexity until I'm done. And then when I'm done, it's like, I don't know how I know, but I also run out of time. So it's like, well, I've come to look at it as like, this is what I can pull out of myself in a snapshot in time. Like, this is what today or this weekend brought, and it looks like this. And that strobe could have been a million versions of that, or in or not, or out, and this thing or that thing. But I landed here. And it's all instinct. Like that's the only there's no rationality to the things that we're doing. It's just like, you have to listen to your instincts. So I started this when I was 25, and I was like, yeah, that's BS. Like there's no way anyone gets here with a formula. It is like, you immerse yourself in the thing, you open yourself up to it, you find the authentic like expression of it, and like that's what it is. Like, and you don't get there by any guarantee or any kind of set notion. And then I get into the business world with Some Odd Pilot, and we get successful with it, and we're in like the board, we're in the CEO's office, and we're like at a lot of high level discussions, and like that's not language that they appreciate. They're not like, well, how are we going to do this campaign? And you're like, well, instinctively I think it should be like this. Or like when we're we're out on the photo shoot and we're like capturing these beautiful images, and this could happen or that could happen, and someone's like, well, why are we doing this versus that? And you're just like, because I feel like this is what should happen. But that is the reality. Like, it is all like feel, and feel is millions of data points from your head to your toe to your ears and your eyes, and like feeding into you and saying like, I think it's over here, I think it's this way, I think it's that way. And that to me is the gold. And the more we train ourselves to listen to that, the faster we get to the answers that are good for us, the answers that are good for the thing we're interacting with. And we're now like in tune with the universe, right? We're out of the cerebral cortex and we're into our experience and all of the rich data that we have. So, and I get to go just play with what Sean makes and what these other guys are doing. Like, I can just tap purely into that, and the results are like insane. Like, it's just it's on another level of even what I thought I could do. And I think probably Sean feels that way about the music he's making. It's like, it's on another level of, and it's like, I see his music that way. It's like on another level of where it could be, or where it was. And I think it's because he's just worked so long and hard to train himself to listen to himself and to listen to how everything makes him feel. And I feel like, I don't know, that's tied into our ears too somehow. Like sound makes us feel something.
Yeah, I'm definitely a sensation seeker, and it was really difficult to, like, in that period of when you have the intense vestibular issues. Because I remember one of the first things is like, you wake up and I'm in the hospital bed and you're like, okay, I got to sit here and do something. Maybe I could watch TV. I'm like, I can't. I couldn't, like, because the TV was doing this and falling sideways, and I'm just like, oh, I can't look at that. So you have to. That was definitely for me, like, this person who takes in, like, likes to take in a lot of stimulation, to just sit there and just, like, be okay with not doing anything. Let's just sit here and rest and think, because that whatever was on the wall was not making me feel good at the time. One of the most important things that I had, and the resource, and I think Chris did too, is I couldn't have gone through that without my wife. She was there taking care of me, and there's going to be things that are really hard for you to do. Like, she was 50% of, maybe even more of the recovery process, and I imagine.
Love is so. I mean, my God, when my wife came in to see me for the first time, it was like, I couldn't believe that there was this like healthy like person standing on 2 feet, like soft, caring, lovely, just there to not even make me feel better. I just felt better. It was like she actually was able to bring the dogs in on like the next day, and it was like, I don't even like the dogs. Okay, I don't like the dogs, but I was like, oh my God, the dogs! Like, I how lucky of a, like, and I have, and the kids were there. It's like that, having people in your life who are looking out for you, like, makes something like that, because you can't, you're thrown so far back off your heels that I felt like a bit like a monster. Like I had the thing over my eye, like I was I couldn't smile, like cereal was falling out of my mouth. I couldn't drink without the liquid pouring down my body. You just feel incredibly beat down and unlovable or something. Like, you're just like, what am I? Like, I've just been absolutely destroyed, and someone's willing to hang out with that. Like, it's crazy and really lovely.
Yeah, I remember at some point, like, I think I told my wife, and then I think I even asked the nurse, because I was like, I felt like I was a jerk. I was like a terrible patient, because I was like going to be so needy, and I needed all these things, and everything was uncomfortable. And you're like, you're fine. You just had brain surgery, and it's okay for you to need things and to feel things, And then the nurse just was like, oh, you're easy. You're no problem whatsoever.
Yeah, they're worried about the mad ones, the angry. Yeah. Like, there's angry and mad patients, I guess, a lot. The nurses told me about stuff where you're like, it's a hard job, And they have these, like, that the Mayo had so many just wonderful people who were like so competent and capable and kind, and like, God, I loved them so much for just like being stand-up human beings that could be there and be so thoughtful. It's important stuff.
I totally agree. Nurses are definitely not paid enough for what they do. They are literally everything in your hospital stay. And each one of them, I think they must be angels because they put up with a lot.
I ended up later getting some gamma ray, like a touch-up, once they left a bit of the tumor in after they took it out. And it started to grow again. And I had to end up going in for the gamma ray after all as the way to halt it. And, that wasn't a walk in the park either. Like, I thought it would be no big deal, but the way that turned out was like, the cage, they put a cage on your head, and they screw it into your head. And I bring all this up because I'm sure some of your listeners are like, I actually got to have both experiences, and it hurt like hell to have that cage in there. I mean, not at the time, but later, because they really do screw it into your skull so that. But it gives you some pretty bad sore spots on the front and back of your head in 4 different spots. And, I think what happens is your brain registers that it had some lightning or some kind of like fire happened in there. And the rest of your body is like in kind of like a panic shutdown again, kind of like with brain surgery where you're so fatigued that you're kind of, it's kind of surprising because you're like, well, I'm just sitting here, but your body's in shock because I think like biologically it thinks like I should be dead because this happened. Like I an interior brain thing happened. So the gamma ray thing wasn't a joke either. And I had like several months of not knowing if I should go back to work or like why I was so tired all the time and like why I had no motivation. And I got a lot of headaches because I was trying to do things I probably wasn't ready to do, but because it wasn't like the brain surgery where they're just like sit on the couch for 3 months. I get it. Like, that's clear,
Right. Yeah, it is a lot more gray, and it's harder too for people in your life to know how to support you sometimes after radiation because it's not so overt and obvious. And everybody copes with it differently, but there's a huge healing component because if you think about it, what radiation is doing, it is damaging the cells of the tumor, but obviously there's going to be some of your healthy tissue caught in the crossfires, right? So there's a lot of healing, and brain surgery or radiation, the healing is so draining and you can't really overstate that. Going through this process, did it change your outlook on life? Did it lead to some change in your life?
I did all of the like homework I could do on how to be present in the moment, how to be still, how to really calm the thinking down, how to take in instead of process, but just take in, like go for walks and not think about the fact that you're looking at a neighbor or a tree or a car, but just to experience and let the brain just like, kind of float in space and calm down and not like take in like movies and audiobooks and all these things, but just to like, like I remember thinking like, when's the last time I watched the colors that happen when you close your eyes and your eyelids? Like when was the last time I actually paid attention to that? And so I would pay attention to that, and just be still for hours at a time. It's pretty lovely.
That's great. It sounds like you really took care of yourself and prioritized that rest that you really needed in that time.
Big time.
And that can be a challenge. And so I'm really happy to hear that you were able to do that. And also that it benefited you, so that if someone else is listening to this and they are struggling with the pressure to get back to regular life.
Oh, yeah.
Hearing how useful that was for you, I think that's really encouraging.
Thanks. Yeah, I would hate for anyone to feel like they had to jump into a lot of responsibilities. I was lucky enough to have a partner that my wife could take care of most of the family business while I was just, sitting there. And then I have people at work that could cover for me. But it felt like my brain was getting rebooted, and it felt like I had dreams about color. I had dreams about sensations like rain and water and dreams about sound. It was almost like, like the whole thing was just getting rebooted, and it was like, okay, let's start from the beginning. Like, what's it like to experience color? It was really wild. And I just kind of like, I don't know. It was kind of a spiritual time too. And I'm not a very spiritual person. Well, I don't think of myself that way, but yeah, I really kind of just like tuned into the universe and I, still do. I still try to.
Well, I think this brings us to one of my favorite questions, which is if you had a piece of advice that you would give to someone who might be listening, who's maybe newly diagnosed or early in their journey, what would you tell them if they're listening right now?
Oh my God. I have a lot of advice. The first one is like, the first people that help you diagnose the issue, they're essential, but they're not the only one. So shop around, get other opinions, see what's available in your health network. But like the biggest thing is, if you are gonna get surgery, you need to go to someone who specializes. You can go to just a general head doctor, that does surgery in the head, but this is a very delicate area. And to get a great outcome so that you don't have a paralyzed face, or even more severe balance issues or infections or other kind of things, if you're going to get surgery, go to ones that only do or specialize in acoustic neuromas. Second of all, you have to have a support network. If you a spouse, a loved one, family members, if you can, or maybe a good, very kind friend if you're lacking for, you definitely need those things to go through that, whether you're just experiencing it and you're scared. You need these people to talk to, and then lastly, like, you're going through something. It's okay to stop, heal, and feel loss. And that happened like later to me. Like, it was like a delayed thing, like something stupid. I had a dumb, annoying sliver of my foot that I couldn't get out of my foot. It was driving me nuts, and I had a breakdown. But I think it wasn't my foot. It like my life changed, So be prepared for that. Be kind to yourself.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's normal that it's delayed, because when you're in it, you are just trying to survive. Like, you are fighting for your life, and you're just going like next doctor's appointment, and you're really focused. And then all of a sudden you get through that part of it and you're like, what did I just go through?
Yeah.
Like, what do I have to cope with? Like, where am I even at? And so I agree. Like, for me, it was maybe 6-9 months after surgery. It was just like, whoomph, all those emotions and things that I was like, oh, okay, I guess I have to deal with this now. Yeah. And so, yes, give yourself grace and time to work through that. That's normal.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, Chris? What's your advice?
Yeah, I guess like in my older years, since I turned 40 or so, I've like been trying to learn what self-compassion is, which is a concept that was super foreign to me. And it's like that, like that nagging voice that's always like demoralizing you, or like, or telling you maybe you're stupid, or maybe you're wrong, or maybe you're, you have to do a thing in order to be worthwhile. You have to be able to accomplish something. And there's a lot of stuff like that goes on. And like the journey towards like just actually having true compassion for yourself is a strong muscle to develop. And it's like, start doing it. The sooner anyone starts doing that, like counter, like very complimentary to what Sean said. This is almost like also like if you need to be your own best friend and actually have great amounts of compassion for yourself. And like, for me, that meant I was like dialed into that enough ahead of time that I was seeing people for my health and my mental health. I had been working out and strength training and playing soccer to a point where when I went into that surgery, I was in such good shape that they were like, I don't know where we're going to find the fat to shove into the hole, which is a weird thing that they do. I had like, my brain did something where it was like, we were going to sleep like 10 or 12 hours a day before the surgery. We're going to eat this way. Like, I hadn't made a lot of these mental decisions, but I feel like there was a mechanism going in me that was like, man, we're going to batten down the hatches and we're taking care of this person, because it's not selfish as much as it is like, I've got to be there for a lot of people. And like, I've got a company to run. I've got family that these people depend on me, and I don't want to like let them down. And having that mental health component and having people be able to suggest to me like, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, or The Power of Now. Talks a lot about how to be present. And I listening to that was so good for me, because as soon as I was in the hospital, it was like, he talks about how we obsess about things, but it's really the space between things that matter. And his example is like, you look into the night sky and it's mostly space, but there are these little dots of things, but most of it's space. And life is supposed to be mostly space, not the appointment or the gold, the gold medal or the thing. It's the space of nothing between the things. And to have that appreciation for when you're knocked down like this, and the willingness to be like, yeah, I don't need to consume a book even, or a movie or whatever, or the next catastrophe that's going on in the world. Like, I can remove myself and just be without processing. We think processing and thinking is our strength, but it's largely a weakness for most of us. And so to find the compassion to let go and to just take care and to just be, and giving yourself permission to be, I think that would be my biggest piece of advice.
Well, it's been great to hear your stories, Sean and Chris. Thank you so much.